At 9 in the morning, I walked through the front doors of my own home, expecting to surprise my wife. Instead, I found her on her knees. Emily was 8 months pregnant. Her hands were in a basin of cloudy water, her face wet with tears, while my mother stood over her like she owned every breath in the room. My younger brother was holding up his phone, recording. A family doctor stood nearby with a syringe in his hand. For 1 second, nobody noticed me, and in that second, I understood something that would change my life forever. My family had not been waiting for me to come home. They had been counting on me staying away. My name is David Mercer. I was 37 years old when this happened, and until that morning, I believed the biggest threat to my family was a difficult business merger overseas. I was wrong. The real danger had been living under my roof, smiling at family dinners, using my father's name, and waiting for the perfect moment to take everything from me. What they did not know was that I had returned 2 days early. What they did not know was that my wife had managed to save evidence. And what they definitely did not know was that, before midnight, I was going to make sure the truth reached people my mother could not control. I had landed before sunrise after a long flight from Singapore. I was exhausted, but excited. For almost 3 months, I had been traveling back and forth because our family real estate company was negotiating a major international deal. Emily hated being alone so late in her pregnancy, but my mother, Eleanor, had offered to stay at our house while her own apartment was supposedly being renovated. At the time, I thought it was generous. That thought still makes me angry with myself. I entered quietly, carrying a small paper bag with Emily's favorite breakfast. The foyer was bright with morning light. Our house was enormous, filled with polished stone, old paintings, and furniture my father had collected over decades. Then I heard my mother's voice. Again, I stopped. Emily was kneeling near the staircase. Her maternity dress was damp around the knees. A metal basin sat in front of her. My mother's bare foot rested against Emily's shoulder, as though she were trying to keep her in place. My brother Liam leaned against the staircase, filming, and Dr. Vance, our family physician, was preparing an injection. "Her stress is getting worse," he said. "What should calm her down?" My mother answered without hesitation. "Then do it." Emily looked up. She saw me. But instead of relief, I saw fear. That frightened me more than anything else in the room. It told me this was not the first cruel moment. It told me she had been pushed so far that she no longer trusted rescue to arrive. Dr. Vance stepped toward her. "Put it down," I said. Everyone froze. My mother turned slowly. "David." I crossed the room, moved between the doctor and my wife, and forced his hand away from her. The syringe fell onto the floor. Then I knelt beside Emily. Her hands were trembling. "I'm here," I told her. "We're leaving." My mother laughed as if I had made a childish joke. "You are not going anywhere." I looked at her. She had always been intimidating. After my father died, she became even more controlling. She spoke about the family company as if it were a kingdom, and about loyalty as if it meant obedience. "You brought a doctor into my home to drug my pregnant wife," I said. "He was helping her," Eleanor replied. Emily flinched. That tiny movement told me everything. Liam lowered his phone. "Come on, David. Don't make this dramatic." I turned toward him. "You were recording her." His expression changed. For the first time, he realized I was not going to argue by their rules. I helped Emily stand and took her upstairs. Behind us, my mother shouted that I was embarrassing the family. I locked our bedroom door. Emily sat on the edge of the bed while I packed one suitcase. She barely spoke. I took clothes, important documents, my laptop, medication, and anything she might need for the next few days. When I reached for her phone charger, she whispered, "They took my phone." I stopped. "Ooh, Liam." That was when I understood the situation was much bigger than one terrible morning. We went downstairs together. My mother waited near the front door. "If you walk out with her," she said, "do not expect to come back." I almost answered. Then I decided silence would bother her more. I opened the door and guided Emily outside. As we drove away, I thought the worst part was over. I had no idea the real nightmare was just beginning. 10 minutes later, Emily reached into the inside pocket of her coat. "I hid these," she said. She handed me several folded pages. I pulled to the side of the road and read them. The first document was a loan agreement secured against our home. The amount was $2.5 million. The signature at the bottom looked like mine. It was not. I read the next page. An international transfer had been scheduled for that night, minutes before midnight. Destination an offshore account. I looked at Emily. "Where did you get this?" "Your mother made me witness some paperwork yesterday. She thought I didn't understand it." I photographed everything before Liam took my phone, then I printed copies from the study. I checked the time. Just after 9 in the morning. Less than 15 hours remained. My mother had not only tried to control my wife, she was preparing to steal millions, bury the debt under my name, and make the money disappear before I could stop her. I folded the papers carefully. Then I started the car. For the first time that morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I took Emily to a small private medical clinic across the city, one that had no connection to my family. I did not want Dr. Vance anywhere near her again. A trusted obstetrician examined her and told us the baby appeared stable, but Emily was exhausted, dehydrated, and under severe stress. She needed rest, fluids, and careful monitoring. I sat beside her until her breathing slowed. Then she finally told me what had happened while I was overseas. My mother had arrived at our home 6 weeks earlier. At first, she acted helpful. She organized meals, spoke to the staff, and insisted Emily should not worry about household problems. Then the rules started. Eleanor began deciding who could visit. She told staff members not to disturb Emily with phone calls. She intercepted mail. She criticized everything Emily did, from the way she dressed to the way she prepared the nursery. Then she began telling Emily that I was unhappy. "She said you regretted marrying me," Emily whispered. I stared at her. "She said the trip gave you time to realize you wanted out. She told me you planned to wait until the baby was born. Why didn't you call me?" I tried. My stomach tightened. Emily explained that several times she called while I was in meetings. But Liam or Eleanor would later tell her I had complained about being interrupted. Messages disappeared. Emails went unanswered because someone had gained access to one of her accounts. My mother had built a wall between us, one brick at a time, and I had been too busy to see it. I opened my laptop. Before joining my father's company, I had worked for years in forensic accounting. My job had been to find fraud hidden inside ordinary, looking transactions. My mother used to joke that I had wasted my education learning how to chase numbers. That morning, those numbers began talking. Emily had photographed several bank pages before her phone was taken. I entered account references, company names, dates, and transfer amounts into a secure worksheet. Within an hour, a pattern appeared. Money had been leaving our household reserves for months. One payment went to a company called Northbridge Interiors. Another went to Meridian Wellness. Another went to Lark Advisory. The names sounded respectable. The companies were almost empty. I traced Northbridge to a business address used by one of Liam's failed nightclub partners. Lark Advisory had paid debts connected to private gambling. Meridian Wellness was more complicated. It owned several small healthcare businesses, including a private psychiatric facility. That name stayed in my mind. I kept searching. By noon, I had identified roughly $750,000 already missing. Then I found records showing my mother had used family assets to guarantee some of Liam's debts. It was not random theft. It was a rescue operation for my brother, financed with money that did not belong to either of them. The $2.5 million mortgage was supposed to cover the rest and ate enough cash for them to move money offshore. I called Jessica Hale, my attorney. She answered on the second ring. "David, aren't you supposed to be in Singapore? I came home early." "I need you to listen carefully." I explained the forged loan, the scheduled wire, and what had happened to Emily. Jessica became very quiet. "Send me everything," she said. "I'm doing that now. Do not contact the bank directly yet, if someone inside has been helping them. We don't want to warn the wrong person." That possibility had already crossed my mind. My second call was to Arthur Pendleton, the independent trustee of my father's estate. Arthur had been my father's closest legal advisor. He was stubborn, careful, and nearly impossible to intimidate. When he answered, I told him the amount involved. Then I said, "I need the trust documents." There was a pause. "What? Which section?" "The misconduct provisions." Another pause. "David." What happened? My mother forgot who actually controls the voting shares. For years, Eleanor had received income from part of my father's trust. That gave her money and influence, but not permanent control. My father had arranged for voting authority to pass to me when I turned 35, with additional protections activating later. 6 weeks earlier, one final restriction had expired. I had not announced it. I wanted a quiet transition. Now that silence gave me an advantage. Eleanor believed she still had enough authority to push me out. She did not. Arthur confirmed what I remembered. Major theft, fraud, or deliberate misuse of trust assets could trigger immediate suspension of benefits and an independent investigation. "I can begin the process," he said. "But stopping an international transfer this quickly will require evidence and a court order." "You'll have evidence." I sent him the documents. At 1:17 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. A message from my mother appeared. "Family dinner. 8 tonight. Come home with Emily. We will settle this privately." A second message followed. "There will be important company announcements." I stared at the screen. She was not afraid. That meant she thought she had another move. Emily noticed my expression. "What?" "She invited us to dinner." Her face changed. "Tonight, Wes?" She looked toward the window. Then she said, "The board is coming." I frowned. "How do you know?" "She told the house manager yesterday. Board members, investors, 2 reporters." "Reporters?" Emily nodded. "She said she needed witnesses." The witnesses. The word made my skin crawl. My mother was planning something public. A few minutes later, Jessica called. "I found something," she said, "and you need to see it now." An encrypted email arrived. Inside was a psychiatric evaluation with my name on it. I read the first page, then the second. By the third, I understood my mother's plan. The report claimed I had become unstable overseas. It described imaginary episodes of paranoia, aggression, and confusion. Dr. Vance had signed it. Attached to the report was paperwork recommending immediate involuntary treatment at a private facility. I checked the facility name. Meridian Wellness. The same network that appeared in the missing money trail. My mother planned to announce that I was mentally unfit, remove me from the company, and have me taken away before the midnight transfer. If it worked, every accusation I made afterward could be dismissed as the words of an unstable man. I closed the laptop. Emily watched me. "What is it?" I turned the screen toward her. She read silently. Then, instead of crying, she became completely still. "They were going to do to you what they tried to do to me," she said. "Yes." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Emily asked, "Are we going to the dinner?" I looked at the clock. There were hours left before midnight. "Yes," I said. "But we're not going there to argue." What are we going there to do? I looked at the evidence on my screen. We're going to let her believe she won. The next several hours became a race between two plans. My mother was preparing a public takeover. I was preparing a record of the truth. Jessica worked with Arthur to request emergency court action against the offshore transfer. They also contacted investigators through proper legal channels. I stayed with Emily. That mattered to me. I had already made one terrible mistake by allowing business to keep me away while my family needed me. I was not going to repeat it by turning the rest of the day into another disappearance. So we worked from the hotel room together. Emily remembered details I would never have known. She told me Liam had once left her phone unlocked after taking it from her. For less than 2 minutes, she had access to the device. She had used that chance to send several audio files to a hidden cloud folder. What audio files? She looked almost embarrassed. I started recording them after the first week. I stared at her. You recorded Eleanor? Not everything. Only when I thought something was wrong. She opened the folder. The first recording was my mother telling Liam to keep Emily away from the mail. The second was Liam joking about signing my name. The third was Dr. Vance discussing medication with Eleanor, as though Emily had no right to object. The fourth was the most important. It was a call with a bank security system. A transfer was being questioned. Liam tried to identify himself as me. The system detected a mismatch. Then Eleanor took over and pressured someone to process an override. She claimed I was unstable and said I would approve whatever she placed in front of me. Jessica listened to the recording. "This changes things," she said. "Enough to stop the wire. It helps. A lot. At 4 in the afternoon. Arthur called. The court has the request. No guarantee on timing. How long? I don't know. That was the answer I hated most. We could prove the fraud and still lose the money if the order arrived too late. At 5, another problem appeared. Jessica discovered that the forged mortgage had been notarized. The notary claimed I had appeared in person. I had been in Singapore on the date listed. My passport and travel records could prove it. But that meant another person had joined the scheme. Every hour, the circle became wider. At 6, Emily rested while I stood at the hotel window watching traffic crawl through the city. I thought about my father. He had built the company from a small property management business into a national real estate group. He was demanding, but he believed a family name meant responsibility. After his death, Eleanor became obsessed with preserving appearances. She cared about the right schools, the right clubs, the right people at dinner. I used to think it was grief. Now I understood it was power. She did not want to protect my father's legacy. She wanted to control it. At 7, Emily came out of the bedroom wearing a deep red maternity dress. I stood up. "You don't have to come." "Wes." "I do. You've been through enough." "That's exactly why I'm coming." There was strength in her voice again. Not the loud kind. Something steadier. "They used my fear because they thought fear made me weak," she said. "I want to be there when that stops working." I nodded. We arrived at the house a little after 8. The driveway was filled with expensive cars. Music drifted from inside. Through the windows, I could see people in formal clothes holding drinks. It looked like a celebration. That was my mother's favorite kind of cruelty. The kind hidden under perfect lighting. When Emily and I entered the dining room, conversation stopped. Around 30 people sat or stood near the long table. Several board members were there, old investors, relatives, 2 journalists. At the head of the table sat Eleanor in my father's chair. Liam sat beside her wearing my father's old signet ring. Dr. Vance stood nearby, and near the far wall were 2 men I did not recognize. They wore plain suits and watched me too carefully. I did not need anyone to explain who they were. My mother smiled. "David."
You came.
I said I would. She looked at Emily. For the first time all day, I saw uncertainty in her eyes. She had expected Emily to be frightened, hidden, or perhaps back under her control. Instead, my wife walked into the room with her head high. We took our seats. Dinner was served, but almost nobody ate. At 9, Eleanor began speaking about the company. At 10, she spoke about my father. At 11, she finally reached the performance she had prepared. She stood. "Friends," she said, "I asked you here because our family is facing a painful private crisis." The room became silent. She looked at me with rehearsed sadness. "David has not been well." There it was. She described stress, confusion, paranoia. She said I had become unpredictable. Then she announced that Liam would temporarily assume executive authority while I received treatment. I watched the board members. Some looked shocked. Some looked skeptical. A few looked frightened. "I never agreed to that," I said. My mother sighed. "David, you may not remember." Dr. Vance stepped forward holding a folder. He said he had evaluated me and believed I needed immediate care. One of the men near the wall moved closer, then the other. I checked my watch, 11:42. 18 minutes until midnight. My phone had no message from Jessica, no confirmation from Arthur. My mother smiled. She thought the clock belonged to her. "Please cooperate," she said. The two men approached. I stayed where I was. Then Emily stood. Before anyone touches my husband," she said, "I think everyone in this room should hear something." My mother's face changed. Only slightly. But I saw it. Emily walked toward the house audio controls. Liam stood quickly. I moved between him and her. "Sit down," I said. "Move. No." For years, Liam had mistaken my patience for fear. That night, he finally understood the difference. Emily connected her phone to the sound system. My mother raised her voice. "This is a private family matter." Emily looked at the reporters. "No," she said. "That is exactly what they want everyone to believe." Then she pressed play. Dr. Vance's recorded voice filled the room. He was discussing sedating Emily. Then my mother's voice followed, approving it. The room changed instantly. People stopped looking at me. They started looking at her. Dr. Vance went pale. Eleanor shouted that the recording proved nothing. Emily played the next file. Liam's voice attempted to authorize the international transfer. Then the automated security system rejected him. Then my mother's voice entered the call, insisting that an override be processed. Nobody moved. When the recording ended, I stood. "My mother has spent months telling people I am unstable," I said. At the same time, money disappeared from family accounts. My signature appeared on a mortgage I never signed, and a multi-million-dollar international transfer was scheduled for tonight. A board member near the end of the table spoke. "David, are you saying the company has been robbed?" "I'm saying evidence has been submitted to attorneys, the trustee, the bank, and investigators." Eleanor slammed her hand onto the table.
You ungrateful child!
There was the real woman. No sadness, no concern, only rage. "You would destroy your own family over money." I looked at Emily, then back at my mother. This stopped being about money at 9 this morning. My phone buzzed. Every person in the room seemed to hear it. I looked down. A message from Jessica. "Order granted. Transfer Farzauzian." I read it twice. Then I looked at the clock. 11:51. 9 minutes before midnight. My mother still did not know. I put the phone back into my pocket. For the first time that day, I smiled. My mother saw my smile and mistook it for nervousness. That was her final mistake. "You think a few recordings can save you?" she asked. I stood slowly. "The transfer is frozen." Her expression disappeared. Liam stopped breathing for a second. "What?" he said. "The court granted the emergency order. The money is not leaving." My mother stared at me. Then she turned toward Dr. Vance. He took one step backward. The entire alliance was beginning to collapse without anyone touching it. A moment later, The dining room doors opened. Arthur Pendleton entered with Jessica and several law enforcement officers. The journalists immediately raised their phones. Arthur looked older than I remembered, but his voice was strong. Eleanor, the trustee has suspended distributions connected to the estate pending investigation. My mother gripped the back of my father's chair. You cannot do that. I can, Arthur said, and I have. One of the officers asked Eleanor to step away from the table. Liam panicked. He looked at our mother, then at the officers, then at me. This was her plan, he said. Eleanor turned on him. Do not say another word. But fear had already taken control of him. Liam began talking quickly. He admitted he had helped with documents. He admitted he had used my identity during calls. He blamed gambling debts. He blamed pressure. He blamed Eleanor. He blamed everyone except himself. Then he came toward me. David, you know me. I made mistakes, but I never wanted this. I looked at him. All I could see was the phone in his hand that morning. You filmed Emily. His face tightened. I didn't touch her. You watched. That ended the conversation. I stepped away. The officers separated Liam from the rest of us. Doctor. Vance tried to explain that he had only followed medical instructions. Jessica immediately asked him whether he had personally examined me before writing the psychiatric report. He said nothing. That silence answered the question. My mother was the last person to move. Even with officers waiting, she tried to keep her posture perfect. She looked at me as if I had betrayed her. Your father would be ashamed. I had spent most of my life fearing that sentence. That night, it had no power. My father built safeguards because he knew money could change people, I said. You proved him right. She was escorted out. Camera flashes followed her through the foyer. The same foyer where, hours earlier, she had believed nobody would ever challenge her. When the front door closed, the house became strangely quiet. I expected victory to feel exciting. It did not. I felt tired. Emily walked toward me. Is it over? The transfer is stopped. That isn't what I asked. I understood. No, I said. Pump. But tonight is over. We left the mansion before midnight. This time, I did look in the rearview mirror, not because I wanted to return. Because I wanted to remember the moment I chose to leave. The legal fallout lasted months. Investigators traced the missing money through shell companies and personal expenses. The forged mortgage became central evidence. Travel records proved I had been overseas when the documents claimed I appeared in person. The notary eventually admitted the signature process had been improper. Liam reached an agreement with prosecutors and testified about the financial scheme. He tried to describe himself as another victim of Eleanor's control. Maybe part of that was true. But being manipulated did not erase the choices he made. Dr. Vance lost his ability to practice medicine while the case moved forward. His false evaluation of me and his conduct involving Emily became part of the investigation. Eleanor refused to accept responsibility. She fought everything. She insisted the money belonged to the family and that, because she was the family's matriarch, she had the right to decide how it was used. That argument did not survive contact with actual documents. The trust was clear. The ownership records were clear. The forged signature was clear. The recordings were clear. And, most importantly, the pattern was clear. This was not one bad decision. It was a campaign. At trial, I sat beside Emily. I did not enjoy watching my mother lose. That surprised me. For months, I had imagined justice as a dramatic moment where she finally understood what she had done. Real justice was quieter. It was dates, records, testimony, bank statements, people under oath, consequences arriving one page at a time. Liam received a reduced sentence because of his cooperation. Dr. Vance faced professional and legal consequences of his own. Eleanor received a substantial prison sentence after being convicted on charges connected to the fraud and conspiracy. The exact number of years mattered less to me than one fact. She could no longer reach Emily. After the case, Arthur completed the trust review. My mother lost the financial privileges she had treated as a birthright. Assets connected to the fraud were frozen, sold, or used toward restitution. The stolen funds were gradually recovered. Then I made a decision that shocked several board members. I sold the mansion. One director told me to wait. "It's part of the Mercer image," he said. I answered, "Then the image can change." Emily could not walk through the foyer without remembering that morning. I could not sit in my father's study without seeing Liam's message claiming he was in charge. The house was valuable, but peace was more valuable. We sold it. I also changed the company. No family member would ever again receive authority simply because of a last name. We strengthened independent oversight. Large transfers required multiple approvals. Medical information could never be used in executive decisions without independent verification and legal review. Some people accused me of overreacting. I did not care. A system that depends on everyone behaving well is not a system. It is a wish. 3 months later, Emily and I moved away from the city. We chose a smaller home near the coast. No marble foyer, no grand staircase, no room designed to impress 30 strangers. Just wood floors, wide windows, a kitchen that smelled like coffee in the morning, and enough quiet to hear the ocean. Our son was born healthy. The first time I held him, I thought about the clock on that terrible day, 9 in the morning, midnight, 15 hours. For months, I had remembered those hours as a countdown to disaster. Holding my son changed the meaning. They became the 15 hours in which my old life ended. And something better finally began. 6 months after the night of the dinner, I woke before sunrise. The house was quiet except for the ocean. I went downstairs and made coffee. Emily was already in the living room with our son, Noah, resting against her chest. He had recently discovered that his own hands were fascinating, and he kept opening and closing his fingers like he had invented them. Emily laughed. It was a sound I had once been afraid I would never hear again. Not because she had stopped laughing completely, because, during the months before everything came apart, her laughter had become careful, small, as if happiness itself might attract punishment. Now it filled the room. I sat beside them. For a while none of us spoke. Then the doorbell rang. A courier handed me a thick envelope from Jessica's office. I recognized the case number. Final restitution accounting. I carried it inside and placed it on the coffee table. Emily looked at it. "Is that the last one?" "I think so." "Are you going to open it?" I stared at the envelope. For most of my adult life, and numbers had made me feel safe. Numbers could be checked, balanced, proved. The case had been won through numbers. The money had been traced through numbers. The lies had collapsed because the numbers did not agree with the story my mother told. But I did not need one more total. I picked up the envelope and placed it in a drawer. "Later," I said. Emily smiled. Then Noah made a strange little sound and grabbed my finger. That was the moment I understood what revenge really meant to me. It was not watching Eleanor lose her mansion. It was not watching Liam beg for help. It was not seeing Dr. Vance exposed. And it was not getting the money back. The best revenge was building a life they could no longer control. A life where my wife did not have to ask permission to feel safe. A life where my son would never be taught that family loyalty meant accepting cruelty. A life where our home was a home, not a stage. I used to think strength meant staying calm while other people pushed you. Sometimes it does. But sometimes strength means walking away. Sometimes it means documenting the truth. Sometimes it means asking for help before pride convinces you that you should solve everything alone. And sometimes justice does not arrive as one dramatic punishment. It arrives as boundaries, evidence, accountability. And the decision not to return to the place that hurt you just because it once carried your family name. I learned something else too. But silence can protect peace, but silence can also protect the wrong people. Emily had been isolated because she was made to believe nobody would listen. I had ignored warning signs because I believed family problems should remain private. That belief almost cost us everything. If there is one lesson I would carry from this story, it is this: love is not proven by how much mistreatment you can tolerate. Trust is not the same as surrendering control. And a family name is never more important than the people you are responsible for protecting. I also learned not to underestimate quiet people. My mother thought Emily was powerless because she was frightened. But while everyone around her treated her like she had no voice, she saved documents. She remembered names. She preserved recordings. She held onto enough truth for us to fight back. And when the moment came, she stood in a room full of people who had been prepared to believe a lie and made them listen. That courage changed our future. As for me, I had to accept an uncomfortable truth. I had spent years believing my job was to provide for my family. Money, a home, security, a future. But being present is part of providing too. Listening is part of protecting. And no business success can replace noticing when the person beside you is afraid. I could not change what happened while I was away. I could change the kind of husband and father I became afterward. So that is what I did. The company survived. In fact, it became healthier after we removed the people who treated it like their private bank account. I stayed involved, but I stopped allowing work to consume every part of my life. I hired stronger leadership. I delegated. I came home, not to a mansion, to Emily and Noah. One evening, months later, we walked down to the beach. The tide was coming in. Noah slept against my chest in a carrier, while Emily walked beside me barefoot in the sand. She stopped and looked back at our footprints. The water reached them one by one. Then they disappeared. "Look," she said. I knew what she meant. The past had happened. We would never pretend it had not. But we did not have to preserve every mark it left behind. We stood there until the last light faded over the water. And then we turned toward home. Not my father's home. Not my mother's home. Ours. And for the first time in a very long time, that word felt completely true. When I think back to that morning at 9 o'clock, I still remember the shock of walking through those doors. I remember the basin, the phone in Liam's hand, the doctor standing too close to Emily. I remember believing I had come home to a disaster. Maybe I had. But I had also arrived at the exact moment the lies could no longer survive. My mother believed power meant controlling the house, the money, the company, and the story everyone else heard. She was wrong. Power was the truth surviving long enough to be heard, and once it was heard, she could not put it back in the dark. That is the part I will never forget. They thought taking our money would leave us with nothing. Instead, losing that old life showed me what was actually worth keeping.